Welcome to this Gŵyl Crime Cymru Festival event, and welcome to Aberystwyth. Croeso i'r digwyddiad Gŵyl Crime Cymru Festival hwn, a chroeso I Aberystwyth. Aberystwyth, the cultural capital of Wales, home to Aberystwyth University and the National Library of Wales, once home to Welsh princes. The Bearets of Wales is the jewel in the crown of Cardigan Bay's stunning coastline and home to hugely successful TV drama Hinterland. And now, the streets that have become familiar to fictional D.I. Mathias's many fans are getting ready to welcome celebrities from the worlds of crime fiction and crime drama. Because Aberystwyth is home to Wales's first ever international crime fiction event, Gŵyl Crime Cymru Festival. During the early May Bank Holiday weekend of 2022, Aber, as the town is affectionately known, will play host to a multitude of events that will offer something for every fan of crime fiction and drama. Internationally successful authors will entertain and meet readers in historic buildings. Pub quizzes will bring together authors and readers. Writing workshops, meet the agent sessions, and informal readings will help encourage and develop new writing talent. And in sparkling celebration of new Welsh talent, a champagne reception for Crime Cymru's first crime novel competition winners. This will be an Aberbank holiday weekend like no other. So, come for the crime fiction and take Cymru home in your hearts. Rydym yn edrych ymlaen yn fawr iawn at eich croesawu I Aberystwyth ac I Geredigion.
Good evening, croeso and buonasera. On behalf of Crime Cymru and our festival partners, Aberystwyth Town Council, welcome to Debuts, Daggers and Diplomats, which is panel number 6 of Gŵyl Crime Cymru Festival Online. I'm Philip Gwynne Jones, I'm the author of the Nathan Sutherland series, and I'm speaking to you live from Venice, which tonight is a little corner of Aberystwyth. As part of the festival, we're featuring an independent Welsh bookshop at each panel, and the bookshop for our event is Chepstow Books. If you're inspired to read any of the books you hear about this afternoon, well, I certainly hope you are, please do consider buying from them. Seriously, everyone, bookshops need a little bit of love at the moment. Without the independence, I don't think any of the writers would be here tonight, so do try and support your local bookshops and they will love you for it. My role tonight is as moderator. I'm not here as an author, I'm here as the moderator. So my role is to move the conversation along in what I hope will be an interesting direction. And it is not, and I repeat, not an opportunity for me to shamelessly publicize my books. Tonight, we have one of my friends from Crime Cymru, who debuted last year with a high-tech psychological thriller Sleepless. I'm delighted to welcome Louise Mumford. Hello, Louise. Lovely to see you. Our second guest tonight is the award-winning author of the incredibly successful series with Sam Wyndham and Surrender Not Banerjee. In his spare time, along with Vaseem Khan, he co-hosts the Red Hot Chili Writers podcast. And if you're interested in reading or in writing, you should definitely listen to it. Delighted to welcome Abir Mukherjee.
Hi, Philip.
Abir, hello, welcome.
Cheers.
And our third guest, last but very much not least, won the Crime Writers Association New Blood Dagger for the gritty urban thriller The Man on the Street. He describes himself as an adopted Geordie. I'm told he's a pretty useful footballer, and I'm delighted to welcome Trevor Wood.
Hi, Phil.
Good evening, Trevor. Is it true about the football?
Well, I don't want to rub it in with Abir, but the England crime writers did win the England-Scotland game 3-0 at bloody Scotland.
3-0, right?
Yeah.
It's a bit of a fix this year, I think. Yeah. Next year we'll see what happens.
Next year, well, I'm Welsh, so my best position is linesman. So.
Phil, you're on our side. You're on our side, Phil.
Well, of course, which actually leads me on to my first point. In chapter 3 of Abir's Death in the East, Sam Wyndham says, Celts and Northerners could be peculiar. Well, we have 3 Celts and 1 Northerner tonight, so I think we can say that we have the most peculiar panel at this year's festival. And if we do the same next year, I'm going to print T-shirts and everything. So, what I'd like to start with then is the elevator pitch, okay? And for those of you who have not read your novels, but who will be buying them at the end of the session, can you have 1 minute just to describe your latest work or your series or what you're working on? And can I start with you, Louise?
You can, and I wish I had a mug printed like yours. I could just show the mug.
Do you mean this mug?
I do mean that mug, Philip. Make sure you show that one. So my name's Louise Mumford. I was born and I live in South Wales, and my debut speculative thriller is inspired by my own insomnia. So as a child, I didn't really see the need for sleep. So my solution to that was that I just didn't, because why would you sleep when there are so many exciting and fascinating things going on in the world? I'm sure my mother was delighted. And so I've used that as my inspiration for my main character. And also I'm fascinated with all the quick fixes that modern society comes up with. And in particular, I know that if many insomniacs wanted to have a quick fix for insomnia, they would jump at the chance. So desperate insomniac Thea hasn't slept more than 3 hours a night for years and jumps at the chance to be part of a new sleep technology trial that offers to change her life. But soon it becomes clear that the trial doesn't just want to help Thea sleep, it wants to control it. And she realizes that staying awake is the only way to stay alive.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Trevor, can I move on to you?
You can, Phil, but first of all, can I say, and I hope I get this right, Dwi'n hapus I pothuma, which, if that doesn't mean I'm happy to be here, it's Louise's fault. She's
pretty good. It's pretty good, actually. Yes.
That's all right.
Yeah.
I've been practicing, you know.
You really, my Welsh is terrible. You could have said, you are vermin or something. And I just, fantastic. Thank you, Trevor. That's really kind.
The Man on the Street. I'll give you the very quick pitch, which is a homeless man sees a murder, but nobody believes him. The series is based around a homeless veteran who suffers from PTSD called Jimmy Mullen, who is living on the streets of Newcastle when he believes he sees somebody thrown into the River Tyne. He's been hiding from life for quite a long time, so he doesn't really want to get involved. But he sees an appeal from a young woman who's looking for her missing father, and she reminds him of his estranged daughter. So he tries to help her a little bit, and gradually she brings him back into the real world. And the two of them try to find out what happened to her dad. It was originally, in my head, written as a standalone novel, because I didn't really see my homeless veteran continually solving crimes as if it was Midsummer rather than Newcastle. But my publisher somehow persuaded me it could be a 3-book series. So the second book, One Way Street, is now out in ebook and audio and is published on June the 10th in hardback. And there will be a third one coming along early next year called Dead End Street.
Fantastic. Thank you, Trevor. Abir, over to you.
Hi, I'm Abir Mukherjee. I'm the author of the Wyndham and Banerjee crime novels set in 1920s India. And they feature a main detective, Sam Wyndham, who is a survivor of the First World War, who finds himself in Calcutta because it's slightly preferable to suicide. There he teams up with a local sergeant, a man called Surendranath Banerjee, but being British, none of his colleagues can pronounce his name, so they call him Surendranath. And so together they basically investigate crimes throughout Calcutta and India. But really what I'm trying to do is look at the history of the time, look at the history of the period, the time of the British colonial rule in India, and analyze that and see what it meant for ordinary British people and ordinary Indians, while killing a lot of people on the way. So the fifth book in the series, The Shadows of Men, will be out in November, and hopefully people will be looking forward to that.
Fantastic, thanks. Well, I think that I'd like to talk about inspiration and about ideas. Now, Louise, you said that you do actually suffer from insomnia.
I do. This is peak time for me. This is
Wow.
my good time. I can carry on writing now until about, obviously I haven't done much writing today, but I can carry on writing till about midnight, 1 o'clock. So I'm really interested in how different people have different sleep routines, and how modern society has boxed us in to one certain routine, because you've got to be up, for a 9-to-5 job mostly. And actually a lot of people will flourish and do better working on a different cycle.
Sure. Did you, the science background to it, I mean, I bought into it. I could imagine it happening, certainly. What sort of research did you do into that?
I read a lot about sleep theory. So all the sleep theory and I'm a bit vague on the actual technology. Otherwise, I would be making millions with my sleep technology and not writing books. But I did read a lot about modern sleep theory, and I'm amazed by how much we still don't know about what the brain does when it's asleep. We're still not really sure. Lots of studies now linking lack of sleep to dementia and Alzheimer's, and it's just such a fascinating subject. So I did do a lot of research into it, but I think when you're an insomniac, you're fascinated by sleep anyway, because you can't understand how it works. My husband just goes to sleep. He goes to bed, and within 3 seconds he's asleep. And it's like it's a magic trick. It's a magic trick that I haven't mastered. I don't know how.
I have amazing sleeping powers. Really, I can sleep on the bus and wake up before my stop arrives. And what I actually loved about the book, if love is the right word, that feeling of tiredness, of just the feeling of having sand running through your veins, that is an absolute nightmare to me as a person who can just drop asleep at the click of a finger. That is my absolute nightmare. Yeah.
It is amazing what the human body can do. Very tired, as new parents can attest. You can actually get through a lot when you're exhausted.
Yeah. Trevor, the man on the street. What I loved about this, I mean, my goodness me, it's grueling. I mean, it does not sugarcoat the idea of homelessness at all. What was your experience of researching homelessness? How did you come up with this as an idea? Because nobody's done this before, I'm pretty sure about that.
I wanted, I mean, one of the things I like about crime novels is that you can explore almost any issue under the guise of a crime novel and lure people into reading about a subject they might not otherwise read about, as Abir has done to a certain extent. So I was interested in kind of portraying a kind of homeless protagonist, really, and trying to get people to empathize a bit more with them than they normally would. And my way in was twofold, really. I learned early on in my research that I think about 10% of the homeless are ex-servicemen. And I was in the Royal Navy for 16 years. So I kind of thought, okay, I can do the ex-serviceman stuff. I know exactly what that's like. But I don't know the homeless side very well. So I volunteered for an organisation called the People's Kitchen in Newcastle, which is an amazing charity which basically feeds the homeless in the whole city 7 days a week, every day of the year. So I'm now a volunteer chef there every Tuesday afternoon, which is great because it gets me off my arse from just sitting around writing all the time, and actually do some graft. And also, you know, get to meet a lot of the clients or the friends, as we call them.
Yeah.
And the growth in what we're doing there has been incredible over the last year or so. We used to serve about 100 people a day. It's nearly 200 now.
Wow.
So it's getting worse, really. So it all came from there, really. And that has helped a lot with the kind of background. And I didn't want to sugarcoat it. I wanted to show the kind of, most of the people on the streets have undergone some kind of trauma. They're not there because they're feckless or because, they gambled away all their money. Generally, it's there because of something pretty traumatic that's happened to them in the past.
I mean, it brings home very much, the appalling situation that these people are in. I mean, Jimmy, at times I just want to give the guy a hug. I mean, it's just, to be that damaged, but he's basically a good guy. But as he said, something happened to him, and that's he's unable to deal with that. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
A terribly, terribly sad way. Abir, the inspiration for Sam and Surrender Not.
That's an interesting question too. There's two answers to that. The easy answer is I was sitting in the jacuzzi at the gym. And the idea came to me. This is where I do most of my exercises, sitting in the jacuzzi at the gym. I don't really do very much else. And the idea came to me there, and Sam came to me there, and Surin was a few seconds after that. But really, the inspiration comes back to actually to me growing up and a search for my identity. I would go to school at the age of 10 or 8, and I would come back and I would tell my dad, today I learned this at school. And my dad would stand there and go, it's very good, it's wrong. and from a very early age, I learned that there was a different side to history, a history that we weren't taught. Because we didn't learn about the British Empire. We learned more about Germany and Italy in the 20s and 30s than we did about our own history. And when you sit between these two cultures, when you sit between a British culture and an Indian culture, and sometimes they work together, but a lot of the times they go like that, and you have to figure out a way through it. So for me, writing this series started really as therapy for myself to try and figure out what I felt was the truth, because Indian histories don't tell the truth either. It's romanticized in a different way. And sitting between both cultures, the truth that I experienced was different from either of those. So I wanted to talk about that. And really, it was about shouting that. It was about shouting this history that we don't talk about, or the Indians don't talk about, something that's in the middle. And in certain ways is quite uplifting, and in other ways is quite enlightening. And of course, being Scottish, I had to kill people along the way. Otherwise, what was the point? I didn't want to write a history book because I wanted people to read it. So I went for crime.
Why crime? Indeed, why crime? Louise, why crime?
Well, this story popped into my head, not in a jacuzzi. It's not that kind of origin story. I do love the fact that you do most of your exercise in the jacuzzi. That's not exercise. That's just relaxing. So I wanted to tell that story, and that was the best way to tell it. Nobody is more shocked than me that I've somehow managed to write a crime action thrillery kind of book. That's not what I thought I would end up writing, but it's what the story had to be. So I had to go with it. And I think it's quite fun because maybe I've come at it at a slightly different angle, because I've got, for example, I've got Vivian, who's an older, she's in her late 60s. So they're not typical kind of action-y heroes at all. And it's interesting to have them put in those situations.
Sure. Trevor, you said crime was a genre you thought you could use to explore things like ex-servicemen with PTSD or the nature of homelessness.
Yeah, but I've also always been a crime reader since I was a kid. I think for people my age, Enid Blyton was probably the gateway drug into it. Famous 5 Secret 7, and kind of went on from there, and then I graduated to Agatha Christie, and I've pretty much been reading crime ever since, really.
I wonder if that was the same for many of us, perhaps. Yeah. Abir, Sam Wyndham's drug of choice is opium, but your reading drug of choice when you were growing up was?
A lot similar to Trevor. I mean, I came to crime, not in the Glasgow sense, in the reading sense. I came to crime at the age of about 14. And I haven't really looked back. I mean, for me, what I really enjoy is the idea of a good person upholding a system that might be rotten. And so I loved the works of Martin Cruz Smith and Philip Kerr and Robert Harris, and these were the things that I enjoyed the most. So when it came to writing, it just felt natural to write in that sort of style.
Okay. Louise, what was your introduction to the genre?
I think it's Famous Five and Enid Blyton, definitely. That is the gateway drug, definitely, for crime fiction. But I just love stories that pull you in, and you're working as hard as the writer, almost as the reader, because you're trying to work out which are the red herrings, are you being misdirected here? And it's a great little kind of game that you enter into with the writer of the novel.
Yeah. I think probably like all of you, I mean, I went through an Agatha Christie phase. I mean, I remember my aunt gave me a big stack of Christies for the summer holiday, and I can still remember those covers. I can still remember the smell of them, you know. But my actual first encounter with crime, it wasn't the Famous Five. It was, did anybody ever read the Three Investigators series? The Three Investigators. They were like the Hardy Boys or Nancy Drew, but they were much cooler. They lived in LA, and they lived in a junkyard with a den. And because this was America, they even had access to a car. And they would solve mysteries for Alfred Hitchcock. Every book, Alfred Hitchcock would call them in and say, I've heard about a castle that's haunted, and you are just the three young men I need to go and investigate this haunted castle. And for years, I actually thought Hitchcock had written these books, and was so disappointed when it turned out that no, actually Hitchcock was making Vertigo and Rear Window and was not writing these books for small boys. And it was such a disappointment when I found that out. But
I forgot to reference Scooby-Doo as well. I think that had a big impact on me when I was younger.
Of course, yeah. Abir, going back to Death in the East, you're doing something which seems incredibly difficult to me there.
Not very well
either. Well, you as a 21st century Scottish Asian are having to put yourselves in the shoes of Sam Wyndham, who is basically a good guy, but carries the prejudices of his age. And then in the other story in 1905, you're having to write about characters with the sort of nasty, prevalent, ever-present, low-key anti-Semitism of the age. Did you find that difficult to write? Because there's a difficult balance to be struck there.
You know what? It's the toughest book I've written to date. But it was the one I felt, you know, when I was writing it, that was the story I wanted to write. I mean, it started off, I just wanted to write a locked room mystery. It took me 5 years to come up with a way that hadn't been done. But as I started writing it, because it was all just going to be set in India, but as I started writing it, this was about 2016, 2017, you know, the big issue that was bugging me at the time was the rise of populism, this fear of the other, this anti-immigrant stance. And it's not just here, it's happening in America, it's happening in Europe, it's happening in India. And I just wanted to look at that because this isn't the Britain that I love. And it's not the Britain that accepted my parents. And what really struck me was that some of the rhetoric that we direct towards Muslims these days 100 years ago was being directed, same words, same newspapers, you just changed Muslim to Jew, was being directed at the Jews coming from Eastern Europe. And what struck me was this is a very, very successful community now. This is a symptom of British success. The integration of the Jewish community is something that is wonderful. And it's a role model for what we can do when we're at our best. So really, I wanted this book to be my take on what was going on in Britain and what we should be as a country. And as you've seen, I'm not sure I pulled it off, Philip, but it was important to me to write this book because I was living in East London at the time. And, you know, the same streets that now have mosques 100 years ago were synagogues. And these people came with nothing and they've made a success. And I don't think there'll be any difference. You know, 50 years from now, we'll be saying the same thing about the Pakistani community or the Bangladeshi community. I mean, I look at my own community, which is the Hindu Bengali community. And we came here, my parents' generation came here as middle-class immigrants. They didn't come with money, but they came with qualifications. And their experience as immigrants is very different to the one that we talk about, which makes me think that a lot of the problems that we do associate with race are just exacerbated by race. That what they really are issues of class. I mean, I grew up in Glasgow as the child of immigrants with better life opportunities than the white working class boys who lived 5 miles away. And there's two lessons in that. One is it says what we are as a country, that, you know, as the child of immigrants, I have great opportunities, better than anywhere else in the world. But at the same time, look at the way we treat our working classes, regardless of color. But all of these things are exacerbated by race. Race does play a part, but we still have to look at issues of class. What's happening to our white working classes?
Yeah.
Sorry, and I kill people, yes, in the book.
And you kill people. Okay, I'd like to move on now to Louise and Trevor. The title of the panel, Debuts, Daggers and Diplomats. Well, we know where the daggers come in. 2 of us have won daggers. 2 of us debuted last year. And I was frantically casting around trying to think of a word that began with D. And I thought, yeah, well, my guy's kind of a diplomat, even though he's a bit useless at it. So there we go, debuts, daggers and diplomats. Louise, you debuted last year during the pandemic, during lockdown. What was it like?
Oh, it's like some weird pandemic cheese dream is what it's like. It's I mean, I don't even know how you can put it into words, being a debut author this year. With Trevor, we're part of the D20 debut, the authors who debuted in 2020, and they're a fantastic group. That's been kind of the highlight, really, of publishing during that year is finding all of those amazing writers, and we meet up on Zoom on Friday evenings.
Oh, that's brilliant! Yeah,
and the support has just been amazing. That's been great. But I signed my contract with HQ, and it was just as the first lockdown in the UK was happening. So just as everything got very strange and very somber, and people started buying toilet roll madly, I had this lovely piece of news. Look, this, and nobody was interested really, and they should have been more interested in me and not the pandemic. But then actually having the book to focus on during that year has been a blessing, because it's given me something to focus on. It's given me a purpose, and I can get lost. Well, I did get lost in that world during the times when it got a bit tough during the pandemic. And then obviously the book came out in December, which was when the third lockdown was happening then. So I feel I've fully experienced all the lockdowns and publishing within them. But the publishing industry has worked really hard to pivot and to make the most of the opportunities despite the pandemic. I think small bookshops have done fantastically. My local bookshop, which is Griffin and Penarth, they've done amazingly. And I felt really supported throughout it.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, I remember this time last year, the first German edition of my first book was coming out, and I was going to go to Leipzig and go to Marburg and think, oh, international author, isn't this wonderful? And then all gone. Yeah. How about you, Trevor? How was the experience for you, again, as a debut author in 2020?
Yeah, it was pretty brutal. My hardback, The Man on the Street, was due to be published on the 19th of March. I had quite a few events lined up. The first one was the Killer Women Festival was on the Sunday. I think they cancelled that on the Friday. Wow. My launch was on the Tuesday. They cancelled it on Tuesday morning. And one by one, like dominoes, every single event disappeared. So it was pretty brutal. But as Louise says, there have been some positives, and our debut group has been incredibly supportive. And it's not just crime; it's all genres. So I wouldn't have met these writers normally. I mean, I've only met one of them in real life in the last 18 months or so, but they feel like friends. We meet every Friday. As Louise says, she teaches me to speak Welsh.
You know my pal Tom Benjamin in Bologna, I believe.
Yeah, Tom's in our group as well. Yeah, which is great for him because he would be quite isolated in Bologna. But
exactly. Yeah,
this has changed. It's moved the goalposts a bit. So I mean, I've embraced the virtual side. So I'm talking to people all over the country. I would probably have done a few events in the Northeast and a couple in London, and that would have been about it. But I'm speaking to people in Stoke and Plymouth and wherever, which is fantastic. So in some ways, our reach has extended, I think. So it's been a lot better than if you'd have asked me 12 months ago how I thought it would go.
It must have been devastating. But then you won the Dagger.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Is it behind you? Is it on the? Is it?
Oh, it's in my other room actually. I use my daughter's
in his
bedroom.
trophy room, Phil.
Yeah, I'm just building that up. Abby. It's it's a bit lonely at the moment, but we'll see. No, it was fantastic. I mean, Abir won at the same event. I mean, it was slightly weird because, of course, it was virtual again.
Yeah, I mean, what a thing to Yeah,
and we were all off camera, so and you didn't have I didn't have a clue that I'd won. They didn't tell anybody, I don't think, but they didn't switch your camera on until they made the announcement. So they literally went, and the winner is, and turned your camera on, and you're like, oh my god. So you didn't even have time, that little walk to the stage or anything, to kind of get your head together. So, but of course it was fantastic, and
wonderful.
The shortlist was so strong that I never had a thought in my head that I would win it. But yeah, delighted, obviously. And also, of course, I'm probably the oldest New Blood winner in history, I would imagine.
But there is no Old Blood Award, so there we go. Abir, I believe you've won 2 historical daggers.
I have. I've been very lucky. I should say, Trevor, winning the New Blood dagger is an achievement, and you only get one chance at it. To get that, you shouldn't underestimate just how tough that is, and what an achievement it is. So congratulations.
I mean, I was going to say, handing
it to you now.
I feel like running and getting it now and holding it up.
The tuxedo, put on the bow tie. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, Abir, I mean, it sounds very impressive, but it's only actually 2 more daggers than I've won.
Well, do you know what? I was going to say that the thing about these online events, if you win, it's as Trevor says, it's a wee bit odd. But if you lose, it's brilliant. I've lost so many things this year. I've been on shortlists for about 5 things and won 1. The other 4, because the camera cuts to you, because that's the other side of it. The camera cuts away from you, so you can be like this. You don't win. So it swings and roundabouts.
Brilliant. Okay, well, there's one question I've got to ask tonight, and I'll have to start with Louise as the other Welsh person here. And my question is, Louise, what is your favourite Welsh thing? Animal, vegetable, mineral, famous person, your favourite Welsh thing?
Oh, right, I wasn't prepared for this. My favourite Welsh, can it be a person?
Of course, yes.
Oh, well, then it's got to be Michael Sheen. Michael Sheen is a Welsh god. Frankly, by now he's fantastic. I'm well up to admit that I've got a massive fan crush on Michael Sheen. It's amazing.
I have a massive man crush on Michael Sheen. Yes, I do. Yeah.
Good Omens. He was in Good Omens on Prime, which was really, really good. And I love the way that he's just so supportive of all sorts of different Welsh relatives. Really active within Port Talbot, where he lives. He's got a house in Port Talbot. There was the Passion of the Christ, I think.
That's right, yes. About 10 years ago, was it? Yeah.
Within Port Talbot, it was all, he walked around the whole town, and they did different scenes within the town. And I think he's just announced a bursary, hasn't he, for Welsh students to go to Oxford.
Is that right?
So yeah, Michael Sheen, God.
Michael Sheen.
And also was in Underworld.
Right, yes. I've recently watched Good Omens because I love the book, and actually Michael Sheen and David Tennant are probably my 2 favourite actors. But he's chameleon-like, I think.
Yeah.
He's absolutely chameleon-like. Yeah.
Well, he was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, wasn't he, this year as well? He was I've forgotten the name of the man. Chris Tarrant. He played Chris Tarrant
yes. Chris Tarrant, yes, that must be strange casting. Yes, who's going to play Chris Tarrant? We'll get Michael Sheen. Yeah, great. Trevor, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but your favourite Welsh thing?
Not a problem. I've got a tie in my head, so I'll throw in Cerys Matthews. I'm a big music fan, and she's terrific. But I'm also an Arsenal fan, and although he's not with us anymore, Aaron Ramsey was an amazing footballer for us. Won us several FA Cup finals, so it's got to be Aaron, probably, just from Kerry.
Yeah, I would go along with that, because I always say that if Aaron Ramsey had played in the semi-final against Portugal, Wales would have won Euro.
I think that's probably true.
That's like me saying that Scotland beat England 5-1 in 1967, right? First team to beat England after the World Cup. Therefore, de facto, it should have been ours.
Yes, well, it probably is, to be fair. Yes, it's like, well, if it had gone in the net, it would have been a goal. Yes. Abir, your favourite Welsh thing?
Well, you know what? I'm going to have to say it's the accent, and I'll tell you why. I know there's more than one Welsh accent, but I'll tell you why. Generically, I'm going to say because it's actually quite similar to the Indian accent. So one minute you can be in Bombay, and the next minute you're in Tiger Bay. So you see, it's very similar. So
that's only when I say it, Abir.
But you know what? Because a lot of Anglo-Indians at the end of empire, so these people who were sort of half British, half Indian, really didn't have a state anymore. And they came back to Britain, but they'd never lived here. And some of them, like Alistair McGowan's father, Alistair McGowan, the comedian, his dad was Anglo-Indian and he never knew this. And his dad would say that he was Welsh because of the accent.
I understand you were formed for this, Abir, and at a crime festival last year, you took the part of a Welshman, which nearly caused an international incident.
I do apologise for that. That was rather. I tried my best. This is the thing. I always think I'm rather good with accents, but nobody else believes this. And so I think I did the entire range of Wales and then south as well. But it was meant as a tribute, and the character, I could have played him straight. I could have played him as a Scotsman or an Englishman. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to invest. I said, what would Sheen have done? What would Michael Sheen have done? Right? Although it probably was more Charlie Sheen by the time I'd finished. But it was meant out of respect and love.
I am just so sorry we haven't got a copy of the script, or we could get you to do it quickly. Anyway, on more serious matters, Louise, thinking about Sleepless, there's one character in particular, which I know we've talked about before, which is the sinister barefoot man. Who do you enjoy writing most, the good guys or the bad guys?
Oh, I always enjoy writing the bad guys or bad women, bad people more. They're just fascinating, and you can. I've been a teacher for 15 years. I've got a lot of pent-up aggression. so you can just do horrific things when you're writing the villains, and you get away with it because it's in your head and they're imaginary people. And it's kind of what kept me going, really. It's just thinking of horrible ways that I can kill people. So I do really like the villains, but I think when you get a hero or a heroine, so Thea is my main character, and you're so kind of closely invested in her, she does take over your life a little bit. You're always thinking about that character and how they would react in certain situations and what they're doing now, if they survived, and what they might be doing. So no, I definitely enjoy the villains more, but it is also fun in a different way to write the heroes and heroines.
I suppose in a way the villains have to be worthy of your hero and vice versa.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And again, teaching, you've got a lot of examples that you can use, just from examination boards. Controversial this year, I'm sure. So teachers would love to use examination board directors as villains. Yeah.
And I was thinking, unlike Trevor and Abir, Sleepless, I imagine, was created as a standalone. Do you imagine coming back to it, or are you working on another standalone at the moment?
When I first wrote it was a standalone, and I think the way it had to end, because I've spoken to you about this before, I was very clear that one woman couldn't on her own overthrow a massive technology company. That realistically can't happen. She's not MacGyver, so she's not going to be able to do that. So that does actually leave it open for a sequel. Vivian and Thea actually could. I'm quite interested now. I am thinking a bit about what they could be doing and how Ing Enterprises could be ruining their lives, because like I said, you don't have to destroy somebody in order to make their story not credible. You can just destroy their life in some way, and therefore the media and society wouldn't believe what they were saying anyway. So yes, there are ideas, but I haven't written anything yet.
Right. No, I mean, they're two great characters. There's mileage in them, I'm sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Good. Trevor, you've got one more book with Jimmy, and when you're finished with Jimmy, what do you see yourself doing after that?
I am going to write a standalone, set in Northumberland, so not that far away from Newcastle. In fact, I was up there last week and it was gloriously sunny, which was a bit confusing. So I don't really think it's right. So yeah, I've kind of started work on that because I've been waiting for my edits on the third Jimmy book, which I've only just got back. So I have started it, but it's got a young female protagonist, so it's very different,
right,
to the man on the street. And my editor hasn't seen it yet, so hopefully she'll be happy with it. But I want to get it into good shape before it gets anywhere nearer.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Watch this space, really.
Yeah. You gave me this? Yes.
It would be like, where's all the homeless people gone?
Indeed, yeah. And Abir, you have another Sam and Surrender Not book coming out later this year, but after that, are you happy with
literally today, I've handed in the first draft of a standalone.
Ah, right.
So, which is very different. It's up to date, it's modern, it's actually set 2 years in the future, and it's set between the US and the UK. And really it looks at the issues of radicalization that causes, I mean, anything I write, it has to be something that's bothering me, otherwise I'm not writing it. And that was what was bothering me when I started writing this book, about what we class as terrorism and what isn't. And unfortunately, events have overtaken me. So I thought I was writing something really prescient that people will look back on and say, he was like Orwell, he foretold all this. And then the Americans go and storm the Capitol in January, and like people are like, well, we've done it now. So
yeah, satire is dead. Yeah.
So it's like, I feel a bit stupid, but hopefully the book still works. I've changed it a bit. But yeah, I think, look, these are issues that need to be looked at, and that's what this standalone's about.
Yeah, and you know, as we were talking about, crime is a great genre for examining stuff like this. Yeah,
absolutely.
I'll be handing over to Amy very shortly with hopefully loads and loads of questions from the audience. But before I do that, again, another slightly frivolous question. No accents will be involved this time, I promise. But Louise, can I put you on the spot and say, who is your favourite character in crime fiction?
Oh, that's easy. It's not really crime fiction because it's TV, but it's Murder, She Wrote, Angela Lansbury. I loved Murder, She Wrote. As a child, I remember I did something naughty, can't remember what it was. And I remember my mum switched off the episode that I was watching of Murder, She Wrote, and I never got to what happened, and I was incensed.
Wow. Do you know, she is huge in Italy. Murder, She Wrote is massive, yeah. Along with Midsummer Murders, which they call Inspector Barnaby. They're crazy for Angela Lansbury in Murder, She Wrote, yeah.
And rightly so. Rightly so. She, yes, loved it. So yes, Angela Lansbury is my spirit animal.
Wonderful, wonderful. Trevor, how about you?
That's pretty tough. I really like Dennis Lehane's crime duo, and now you're stretching me to remember their names. It's Angie Gennaro and Patrick something, can't remember his surname. But they're early Dennis Lehane books. He's a private detective, she's his on and off girlfriend, and they're superb. They're absolutely superb. There was a movie made of one of them, Gone Baby Gone, which was a brilliant crime movie as well.
Right.
So those two, I think.
Were they an influence on you in any way?
A little bit, yeah. Patrick Kenzie, his name is.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Just more about the relationship. I kind of like relationships that aren't quite working in the background of books. So a little bit of Jimmy's kind of dysfunctional relationship with people came through from there, I think.
Okay, thank you. And how about you, Abir?
For me, it has to be Bernie Gunther, the character created by the late great Philip Kerr, the detective in Nazi Germany. Such a big influence on everything I've written to date. I don't think I would write what I write if I hadn't read Bernie Gunther. I mean, I remember the first time I picked it up and I thought, this speaks to me in a way that very little other crime fiction or fictional detectives had. So that, I mean, I was thinking the other day, it's been over a year since I read the last Bernie Gunther novel, and I'd be looking forward to the next one right now. And yet, we're not going to have any more. So for me, the fact that we won't have any more Bernie is a big blow. Other than that, Poirot, obviously, because we grew up with Poirot in all his shapes and forms. I'll even accept Ken Branagh, but really for me, it's either David Suchet or Albert Finney or Peter Ustinov. But he's got to have a mention.
You writing a Bernie Gunther novel, of course.
Sorry?
There's nothing stopping you writing a Bernie Gunther novel.
I wouldn't. I'm not good enough to write a Bernie Gunther novel.
Okay, and with that, if we can bring in Amy and see if we have any questions from the audience. Hello, Amy.
Evening, everybody. So we have had so many comments on the YouTube stream, so many questions. So I've picked out a few. So the first one that we have is from Michelle, and she would like to know if any of you, before you were published, had given up writing for any length of time because of rejection, and if so, what made you start again?
Well, it doesn't really apply to me because I really had not written very much at all before being published. I was one of those lucky guys, one of those very, very lucky guys where my first book got picked up. The only thing I'd written previously was a review of a Hawkwind concert back in the 1980s, which I wrote in the style of Michael Moorcock.
And that got a publishing deal as well, didn't it, Phil?
I still think it's one of the best things I've written, to be honest. But anyone else?
I've been rejected loads of times. I'm like the queen of rejection. I felt like Wonder Woman by the end. We're just kind of like batting them off with your wristlets. But you just have to remember why you liked writing in the first place. Take away all the getting published stuff and carry on doing that. And then if you really focused on getting published, you do have to create a kind of shell around yourself and try to keep your self-belief without it turning into arrogance. Always listen to advice, though.
Yeah, I think it goes with the territory, doesn't it? Everybody gets rejected all the time. The Man on the Street was out on submission for almost a year before it got picked up. And that included a huge rewrite for an editor who then rejected it again after the rewrite. It went on for ages. Luckily, my agent believed in it as much as I did. So he put it back out there again with the new version, and eventually it got picked up. So it's not a measure of how good your book is. It's a variety of reasons that things get rejected. They're just the wrong climate, went to the wrong people. Nobody knows what to do with a book about a homeless guy. It can be anything. So you just have to, if you want to be a writer, I read a piece of advice recently, and the main one was put your ass in the chair. You just got to keep sitting down and keep writing, basically.
Abir?
Well, I was going to say keep sitting down and keep writing is good. I've got the sitting down bit done. I can do that. I'm a bit like Philip. I was very lucky. I always suffered from a lack of self-confidence. I never thought I was good enough. I wrote a chapter and I would read it and then I was thinking this is rubbish and I just put it in a drawer. So I never actually submitted anything till I saw this competition in the Telegraph looking for new crime writers. And I just entered the competition. I wrote 10,000 really rotten words, tidied up the first 5,000, sent it away, and I was just really lucky that I won. But then I had to write a novel, but it was easier knowing that the contract was there. To be quite honest with you, if I hadn't won, I don't think I would have written the book because I just didn't believe in myself.
Wow. So believe in yourself and keep going, keep writing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. So we have a question now for Abir from Chris, and they would like to know why the big gap since your last book.
Why the big gap? A, I'm slow. B, I'm lazy. No, a couple of things. It's just timing, really. I think this book 5 was supposed to come out earlier this year. It was supposed to be out round about now, in fact, but it firstly got pushed back because of COVID. So the launch date is November. But also at the beginning of COVID, last March, April, when I should have been really motoring on this book, getting it done, I couldn't write. And I think a lot of authors went through that. I think March and April last year were just really, really difficult times. And so I was basically 3 months behind where I should have been. And then when I did submit it, it was just, the bookshops were closed and everything. And then I think when they reopened, there was a big number of books looking to come out. And my publishers said, well, we're going to push you to November because we like you freezing your arse off on a tour at that time of year. So that's literally why. And I do apologize, but part of it is my own sort of tardiness. Sorry,
so we have a question from Joe. And this is for everybody again. How do you balance perfect versus done? And when do you know when you can send that draft to the publisher? Should we start with you, Louise?
Again, as a teacher, I think you very quickly learn that perfect is highly unlikely to happen. So I think done is more important, and you can work on perfect in editing. I think there are some writers who are submitting who get so caught up in trying to make every sentence perfect. They just spend years on this one book and they never submit it because it's never right to them. And I'm very much of the school of thought that you do have to submit it. And then obviously your editor or your agent are going to have ideas, and then you work on perfect.
Trevor?
Yeah, pretty much the same as Louise, really. I'm not a planner, so I have to do a lot of editing, a hell of a lot of editing. So I edit for probably about half the time that I'm writing the book, really. I edit almost every other day once I've written something. But it's never going to be perfect. You make it as good as you can get it. And then you hope that other people are going to help you make it a little bit better, but it's still not going to be perfect. It's unattainable. Don't aim for that. And I in between leaving the Navy and this, I worked as a journalist for a while, so deadlines are kind of immovable to me. I just hit my deadline. So if I've said I'm going to deliver a book by a certain day, that's when they get it, and I get it as good as I can by that date, really.
Abir?
Yeah, I would concur. You are never going to get it perfect. Every time you read something, you will change it. I've submitted a final draft, final draft, and then when I read it through in the proof copy, I still want to change 24 things. So you have to get it to a point where you're happy with it, but it will never be perfect. As Ruth Ware once said to me, it's a cathedral in your head, and it's a shed by the time it hits the page. Your job is to turn that shed into a greenhouse and then, submit it at that stage, I think.
Brilliant. And while we're with you, Abir, we have a question from Bev, who has asked very nicely, please, can you do an impression of Anthony Hopkins?
Bev was going to say, can you please never do a Welsh accent again? I thank you, Bev, but I don't think I will be doing Anthony Hopkins because I will never get invited. I'll get lynched if you invite me next time. I will get lynched. So I'm not. I've got an auntie who works in Swansea. I love Swansea. I know it's not Aberystwyth, but I've got lots of friends in Swansea, and my old physics teacher was from Aberystwyth, and she had hands like big lamb chops, and she was like, "Abir, you're a very lazy boy." There you go. There's Mrs. Fraser, my physics teacher, rather than Anthony Hopkins.
And apparently, it seems like our audience is as enamoured with the Scottish accent as you are with the Welsh, because we've had someone who wishes to remain anonymous has asked, can you please ask Abir to say brilliant?
Thanks, Mum. Brilliant. There you are.
Brilliant.
With this face and this accent, I could run a call centre.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the next question that we have is also from Bev, but this one is for Louise. And she says, as you are a lucid dreamer, an insomniac, do you also lucid dream? Because she does.
Yeah, no, lucid dreaming, I believe, is where you leave your body and you can travel. I believe you in your I don't know what the state is called.
Your astral form or something.
Astral, yes, I think that's right, astral. Now, I don't do that, mostly because during the night I'm awake. You have to be asleep in order to do the lucid dreaming bit, which is where I fall at the first hurdle. So no, I don't lucid dream. I just walk around the house awake with cups of tea, trying to kid myself that I'm tired.
And when you do sleep, then this one's from me. Have you ever had sleep paralysis?
Oh, again, that's terrifying as well. I talk a little bit about that in the book. It's where your body shuts down your motor system so that you don't act out your dreams, which is very sensible. Mm-hmm. However, if you wake up in that state, you can't move, and it's absolutely petrifying. I don't actually experience that either. Again, I don't sleep that much.
You're awake.
I'm not the right person to ask about what you do when you're asleep, because I spend most of my time awake. But that is absolutely petrifying. And I think a recent book called Sleep Tight by Caroline Green, that explores sleep paralysis in particular.
Yes, no, I've had it many times, and it is absolutely terrifying. She would also like to know if the island in Sleepless is based on Caldy Island.
It is, yes. So Caldy Island is just off Tenby, and it has got an aging population of monks. So they've been closed during the pandemic, obviously, to protect the monks. The monks are vaccinated now, so the island is going to open very soon, I think. But it is all taken from Caldy Island. Obviously, my book is a very dilapidated and abandoned version of Caldy Island, but yes, I was very much influenced by that, and it's a beautiful place. I recommend it as a day trip.
It is. It's absolutely gorgeous. We have a question from Alex, who would like to know what for you is the most important small element in your books that may not be crucial to plot necessarily, but that you enjoy the most. So if we start with you, Trevor.
I like the supporting characters, actually. I like to invest a lot of time in all the minor characters who may only appear in one chapter or in one scene in one chapter. But I like to work really hard on those. I want them all to be memorable, which is not always easy, because sometimes I've only got 2 lines or something, but I really try and develop those, not just leave things to the 3 or 4 main characters.
Brilliant. And Abir?
It tends to be the in-jokes. I shouldn't say that, but it is true. So it'll either be because I name a lot of the characters after my friends, and I kill a lot of my friends in books. And I'll have something there that at least somebody will get. One of my characters in my second book was named after a friend of mine who's bald, and I made him bald in the book. And he said to me, "Dude, you couldn't have given me hair, at least in the book." And I was like, my imagination didn't stretch that far. So since then, I do sort of in-jokes about people in the books that they'll get. But other times it's little motifs. So in the 4th book, there's a motif about birds that not many people have seen all the way through. People pick up bits of it, but very few people have seen the whole motif. So that makes me feel smart.
Brilliant. And you, Louise?
Similes for me. I've discovered that I love a simile. My editor makes me cut out at least half of them, which is just gutting because I love them all. They're like children. And so yeah, I love creating, in my mind anyway, original and brilliant similes. But clearly that's not completely agreed on when it gets to the editing stage.
I love the ghost balloons.
Ghost balloons, yes.
Lovely. That is lovely. Yeah.
I fought for that one to stay in.
Brilliant. And I think we probably have time for one more question. And this one is from Caroline. And she would like to know, what do you all have in your mugs?
I have to say, this is not tea.
What are you drinking, Phil?
Well, did you really think I was going to come on here and have a cup of tea at this time of night?
What about everybody else? What are you drinking?
Well, I was drinking whiskey. I was drinking a Dalmore single malt, but it's empty now. This is what you people have driven me to. This is supposed to last me a night.
So you're not the only one. Mine's empty as well.
There we go.
That was just beer, though.
I've just got water, which is really sad.
Really?
That's a debut for you. Give it 6 months, you'll be an alcoholic like the rest of us.
And do you guys have a favourite Welsh drink? I know that there are quite a few famous Welsh whiskies, Welsh gins. Phil, should we start with you?
Oh my goodness me! When my first book was published, 2 friends of mine bought me a bottle of what's the really famous Welsh whiskey?
Penderyn.
And it was marvellous. And I made it last until book 2, possibly, which I was very proud of. Yes, but I didn't get one for book 2. So maybe if they're listening, book 6 next year.
Louise?
It's a marvellous drink.
Oh, this is terrible. There's probably a Welsh gin. I do like gin, and there probably is a Welsh gin.
There's a Brecon gin. I believe there's a Monmouth gin.
Yeah.
I mean, this is making me look awful that I know all of these things. But there are quite a few Welsh gin companies.
Yes, there are, and I think there's one I think it's Swansea or Bristol way. There's one as well, because we went to the actual distillery, but I'm terrible at remembering the names, and I'm also terrible at just buying whatever's on offer. so
What about you, Trevor? Do you have a favourite?
I'll certainly take the Monmouth gin without any problems at all, but it would probably be a good Welsh real ale, but I don't know the names of them.
Brains is a good one. Brains is a good one.
That would do for me, guys.
Yeah.
I'll take the recommendation anytime.
Abir, what about you?
Well, you might have noticed that I like my whiskies. In fact, my books have had to leave to make space for my whiskies. I've got a wee bit of a problem, several problems. But yeah, I would say Penderyn, which is really, really nice. And for a Scotsman to say that, it hurts, but it's true. It's good whiskey.
And do you have a favourite Scottish whiskey?
I have so many favourite Scottish whiskies. Right now, there's a Glendronach 21-year-old, which is really, it tastes like honey going down, which I like. But Val McDermott told me that I drink girls' whiskey because I like sweeter stuff, the sherry stuff, where she likes the really hard, stuff that tastes like it's just been dug out of the ground. So yeah, apparently I drink girls' whiskey.
And there we are.
That I haven't got something I bought at the supermarket fairly recently was a bottle of something called Street Gin, which apparently is by royal appointment and is €10 for 1.5 litres. And I'm convinced it really is made for royal appointment.
I think Prince Andrew drinks that.
And there we have it. I think that's all the questions that we have time for. So I will leave you back in the capable hands of Phil. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.
Okay, well, thanks so much, everyone, for being here tonight. Thank you for the brilliant questions. Very, very big thanks to Louise, to Trevor, and Abir. I kind of think this is like in a war movie where the general says, "Gentlemen, we shall meet in Berlin." Well, I hope we will meet in Aberystwyth next year. That would be fantastic. I really hope we can do that.
Right.
Thanks everyone for joining us this evening and for your questions. Just to remind you, if you'd like to buy any of the books we've talked about, please do go and visit Chepstow Books. If you look on the website under this event, there's a link to Chepstow Books. As I said, indie bookshops need our love right now, and we will love you for it if you buy our books through them, or anybody's books through them. Okay, I think that's everything. Good night, nos da, buona notte, and I hope we'll see you in Aberystwyth next year. Thank you all very much.
Bye.
Phil.